Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us on today's episode of The BAM with Lori and Ginny. Today, we have a very special guest, Cynthia Dvorak, and Cynthia is going to tell us all about how she wants to keep her kids off screens and out actually going and doing and playing and, just the balance of creating a space for her kids to really thrive. Cynthia is also going to talk about her journey. She's got a really interesting background. She worked at Access Hollywood, and she now finds her home here in Colorado. So, Cynthia, we're just so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Give us a little background of who you are. You have a website called Screen Less, Play More. I want to talk a lot about that. But let's talk about how you got there.
Okay.
Oh, don't let me forget. I want to hear about how to keep different ages off screens too.
Okay.
For sure.
So if you don't mind, Lori and I both have very different age kids.
Yes. And it's important not only to keep them off of screens, but actually have them play. Even teenagers need to play. Actually, even adults need to play. The most recent thing that I put on my site was date ideas for grown-ups to actually be playing and doing fun stuff, because it does different stuff in our brain instead of just sitting at dinner staring at each other.
Like that.
But
Lori and I played on Monday. We'll have to share later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very interesting.
You're never too old.
Never too old.
No.
All right, Cynthia. So take us back. So where did your, history lead you to your now? Let's hear all about it.
I have a past pretty much my whole life as a writer. So I left Colorado to go to UCLA, and I got my bachelor's in history, and then I got my master's in screenwriting. But in between those two degrees, I worked at Access Hollywood for almost 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
I was the manager of the videotape library, and that's actually where I met my husband. He started as a runner errand boy, and then eventually became the assistant director. And it was a really fun place to work. And
20 years that's a good go.
I know. That shows how old I am now.
Isn't it crazy to even think about that? To even think 20 years, But yeah.
And it feels like such a different life ago. But I've just always kind of been writing. I was still doing screenwriting on the side when I was working at Access. I was the first intern ever at The Simpsons.
So that is awesome, because it's still going, right? It's still going.
It's still going. I don't know if they have any interns after me. I hope so. But it had been on the air for, at least 30 years.
Is it the longest running?
I think it's got to be.
If it's not, it's very close.
Yeah.
And boy, those guys have a really, really fun job.
Oh, God, I can imagine.
Just coming up with funny ideas and making up jokes. And so I actually, I guess kind of part of my history is that I've always sort of made a lot of opportunities for myself. And I noticed UCLA was not doing an amazing job of hooking up students with mentors or with alums. And so I just went to the Alumni Association, and I got names of writers that had done the MFA in screenwriting. And I had a writing group of fellow students, or probably 5 of us. And I just wrote letters to probably 50 different people that had gone to school. And I just said, would you be willing to have dinner with my writing group? And we'd love to pick your brain. And so out of 50, I would guess 5 of them actually responded. And we went to dinner with a bunch of people. They were so amazing. One of the guys is the one that wrote Meet the Fockers. And then one of them is named Don Payne. And he was on The Simpsons. And he was the nicest guy ever. And he went to dinner and talked to us. And then afterwards, I wrote him an email and just said, what kind of internship do you think I should do? And he's like, do you want to intern at The Simpsons?
Oh my
I was like, yes, please.
Oh, that is so cool. So was that kind of the start? That was before you started working at Access Hollywood, right? You had your internship.
That was actually, so I started working at Access Hollywood pretty much right after my undergrad. And I was there for maybe 6 years or something. And then I left to go to grad school.
Okay.
And then I actually came back. So I did 2 different stints. And so it was kind of in between my 2 different stints. And I did grad school and I did that internship.
Oh my gosh,
Wow.
so fun. Was there ever an opportunity to stay? Would you have considered staying on board if there would have been a position
Oh, I would have
open?
loved to,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's the type of place that nobody ever leaves.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
That
even the
says
PAs.
something.
Yeah, it's an amazing gig. And so like even the PAs, it's sort of like once you get a job there, you're not gonna leave it.
Yeah.
And so there just weren't any openings because I absolutely definitely would have loved to stay.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I want to pause right there because I think, you just kind of hit a note that I think is a really good reminder for all of us that are still thinking that, sometimes things just don't happen. I feel like you're showing that if you put yourself out there, right? Like sending all these letters, although back in the day, it was probably handwritten or maybe it was emails, but I think, trying something different, right? Like if you really want something, like stepping out of your comfort zone and doing something different. I think you make a really good example of how people really do just want to reach out and help people too. Like
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
people were, yeah, we'll go hang out with you. We want to tell you everything
Yeah.
we know. Or, I think so I think that's exciting to know that, those kind of people are out there, just want to help and teach. So
I think that's
And
true.
I
I
think,
think most people want to help and you just have to ask.
mhm.
yeah.
And you just never know what's going to come of it. I never imagined that I would get an internship out of it. We honestly just wanted advice. We
Mhm.
Yeah.
took them out to dinner and we just sort of said, how did you get to where you are? And try to figure out how to piece together our futures. And then, I wasn't even saying, can you give me an internship? I just said, where do you
Sure.
think I should do one? Which is actually the same sort of thing of like when I was looking for internships in undergrad. I called up my aunt who had worked in the business and I just said, where do you think I should try? And she was like, let me call you back in a few days. And she called back and she said, do you want to do an internship at Access Hollywood? And I actually said, what's that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I had never even heard of it. And she happened to like live next door to somebody that worked there. So
So
you just
amazing.
have to ask because you never know where it's going to go.
I had a persuasive communication instructor that I absolutely loved. And one of the things that he said is give people a chance to say yes. And because we always say, like, well, the worst they can say is no. But I loved his spin on it. Like, give people a chance to say yes. And a lot of times they want to say
Mhm.
yes. So
And I
I
actually
love
saw
that.
something the other day online. Somebody sort of similarly was saying, don't be the person in your life who says no.
Yeah.
Let the other people. So if you see the guy at the bar and think he's cute, don't just, oh no, I'm not going to say anything. Go
Yeah.
over, talk, let him
Mhm.
say no. Or
Yeah.
if the person that you want to talk to about a job or whatever, like don't be the one that shuts yourself down right at the gate.
Yep.
Go out to the universe. And if it says no, okay, fine. But more than
Yeah.
likely, somebody's going to say yes. And you need to be your own best cheerleader.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome. Okay, so back to Access Hollywood because I think that's just like it sounds so fun. So we'll get to keeping your kids off technology here soon. But at Access, what did you learn? What were some things that you felt really helped you find where it was that you wanted to continue to go? You say you're a screenwriter.
Or, at first it was kind of my quote unquote day job because I knew I wanted to do screenwriting, but you don't just wake up one day and write an Oscar winning screenplay. So I knew like, okay, I need a while to like just write a bunch. And then you also just need to pound the pavement and get an agent and all that good stuff. And that takes a while. So I went there just thinking like, oh yeah, this is going to be sort of my side thing, and it ended up really being a family. I started out in the videotape library and we really truly literally were using videos because I started in 2001.
Yep.
And so you're just finding footage to put on the show for the producers. And pretty much everyone in that room was about the same age. We were almost all just fresh out of college because it was really the entry level position at the show. And it was so fun. I mean, it was kind of like being at summer camp or something. Like I actually told my parents at one point that there was no difference to me between weekdays and weekends because I had
Oh my
so much fun at
gosh.
my job.
That's what everybody wants. It's
Yeah.
Yes.
amazing.
It really, really was fun. And I eventually got promoted and became the manager. And so then it wasn't quite as much fun when you have
Yeah.
to be the boss and the one telling people like, so you came in 20 minutes late today.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was still just a really, really great place to work. Um, from the bottom up, the producers the editors, even the on-air talent. I mean, when I decided to leave, we had a party at a bar, and I remember ordering another drink, and the waiter was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. That guy has paid for you for the whole night." And it was Billy Bush, our
Wow.
host.
Oh,
And just, just everybody was really, really amazing. And it kind of goes to show you, I think there's something like 10 couples that met there and got married, including
Wow.
myself.
Wow. It's like
Yeah.
The Bachelor, The Bachelorette. It's more successful.
Yeah.
totally. So you met your
Um,
husband there, and then did you both exit the company at the same time?
no, I stayed for a while, and then I eventually I left to just stay at home with my boys. So when my youngest son was maybe almost 2, I decided to just stay at home with them. And my husband kept working until very recently. He stopped about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, it's just been a really, really great place.
You shared, and I know this isn't about you. This part's not about you, but it's somebody you encountered there. It was a very high profile celebrity that you said was very kind. I don't know if you remember sharing this story with me. I asked you who the nicest person, the nicest celebrity you met was, and you told a story about Tom Cruise.
Oh, he really is a super nice guy. And my husband's joke is that my husband was on the set once when they were doing an interview with him, and for some reason they were talking about, I don't know, somehow they got onto the subject of love or something, and Cruise was like, "I love everybody. I love you. I love you. I love you." And he was like pointing to everyone, and he pointed at my husband. So my husband is always like, "Tom Cruise loves me." Okay?
Yeah,
I have proof.
yeah,
So I didn't get to be on the set very often. I was, in the dungeon with the
yeah.
tapes. But one time I went over to the Xerox machine and I opened it up and there was some sort of note on it. And I picked it up and looked at it and it was like, "Dear Billy, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you." It was just some like really, really nice flowery thing. And it was like from Tom Cruise. So it was like a
Aw.
handwritten thank you
Yeah.
note. And I guess Billy was probably copying it to save it for posterity. But just like how many big profile stars do stuff
Yeah.
like that? Or, like sometimes he would send flowers or he would send donuts or something to just the whole crew. And I've
So
just heard a
nice.
million stories about him doing things like that and just being a genuinely nice person.
Love that.
Refreshing, right? I think that's refreshing because you never know, right? Like, as for us common folks that don't get to interact with these famous people, like you have a perception that they've put out there that like maybe that's a nice person, maybe that's not a nice person,
Yeah.
right? But it's really nice to hear these stories where it's wow, some of them that go above and beyond because they truly are just good humans and
And
they treat
yeah,
everybody
kind.
And
kind.
this wasn't him being like some up and comer. I mean,
No.
he was Tom Cruise. I mean, even though this was 15 years ago or something, I mean,
Yeah,
he
he's
was
been
the
around a
hugest
while.
star in the
Yeah.
world. Yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't have to do that. And he
Yeah.
certainly didn't have to write a handwritten note. And I'm guessing that is one of the main reasons that he is like the biggest star ever, is
I
because
love
he
that.
just is kind, he's grateful, and, you know, I don't know what he's like behind closed doors, but
Right.
certainly in the
Yeah.
public, he's a
Yeah.
very, very kind person, and you've got to guess that that's why he got where he got, because nobody
Yeah.
likes to work with a jerk. I'm sure early in his days when they had a choice between him and somebody else, they were like, "Oh, well, that guy was really nice and he wasn't a
Absolutely.
bummer to work with. Let's hire him."
Totally. Yeah. You want to keep
Um,
sunshine around you, right?
Mhm.
Why not go for those people?
Yeah.
totally.
Okay, sorry, that was a side note, but I
Yeah,
had to
yeah,
I
sorry.
just love that
Tom
story.
Cruise
So
distracting.
yeah.
No
So at the time you had your son that was 2, you decided that you were going to be a stay-at-home mom. Fast forward to now, your boys are, you said 9 and almost 7.
Yes.
And you have, as we all encounter this push and pull of technology, right?
Mhm.
Like how much is too much? It's just inevitable. It has to be part of our lives. But as a mom, how do we strike that balance? So tell us about where you've kind of gone down the path of raising your boys and what you've seen and what you've created.
Yeah, I started noticing when my oldest son was probably about 4, he would just throw these enormous fits every time we turned off the television, and he would just beg for it all the time. So my son has ADHD and anxiety, which I also think really plays into it, because I've learned in the research I've done in the last couple of years that neurodivergent kids are a lot more susceptible to screens, because they thrive on that dopamine hit that you get,
Mm.
because if they're unmedicated, that's really what they need, is dopamine, and um, that that kind of helps to keep them focused. And
Mhm.
so if you're playing a video game or something like that, you're getting this stream of dopamine. And for an ADHD kid, that helps them focus and helps them feel a little bit more normal and regulated. So if you take that away, they freak out. And so I will absolutely admit some kids act like this, some kids don't. It really depends on your kid, obviously. It's the same sort of with food or with food dye. Some kids really, really react when they're given food dye and some don't. So some parents are sort of like, that's BS. What are you talking about? And it's like, well, that just doesn't happen to your kid, but I have definitely seen how it affects my kids. And so we had a therapist working with him at one point, and he said, you guys are creating a Skinner box. And we were like, what are you talking about? And he said, there's a psychologist named BJ Skinner, and he did a bunch of like either mice or rat experiments where they'd press the lever to get
Yeah.
sugar or a reward or something. And sometimes when they pressed the lever, they'd get the reward. And sometimes when they pressed it, they wouldn't get it. So they just pressed it all the time, all the time, all the time, because you never know when you're going to get the reward. And so he said, if you say yes sometimes to turning on the TV or giving him the iPad, and you say no sometimes, and he has no idea when you're going to say yes or when you're going to say no, he's going to beg you all the time, because, what's he got to lose? He can just whine and beg all the time, and it
Mhm.
drives you crazy. And then, of course, if he asks you 7 times in a row, you're like, fine, okay. So we got to a point where we just really had to structure it so he knew. And it's changed through the years. Like when he was really little, it was like, okay, when you wake up in the morning, you get to watch a show before preschool while you're eating your breakfast, or, whatever it's been. And so now we've kind of settled into, um, we do not do screens at all during the week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because I also feel like they get a lot of screens at school.
Mhm.
They each have their own Chromebook at school. And granted, there's nothing wrong with the programs that they're doing. They're educational, but it's definitely a lot of screen time, and they just need to unwind, and they need to just be kids, and they need to play and run and jump and fight with each other and wrestle. And so whenever they come home, they just have to play. And then on Friday afternoon, we'll let them watch for a little while, and they love watching YouTube. So we were like, okay, you can watch like an hour of YouTube on Fridays, and they just watch whatever crazy show. But again, I've got a lot of rules in place where I don't want them to just click on whatever the algorithm tells them to, because that is what kind of takes you down this rabbit hole and might get you to inappropriate content. So they know exactly which channels they like, which ones are fun. It's usually like people putting together Legos, or
Yeah.
there's a guy that just makes really fun robots or something. So they like go to that channel and watch, but they know they're not allowed to just let it roll and roll and roll. And then on Saturday morning, they're also allowed to watch shows, or even, sometimes they play Minecraft. They're
Mhm.
obsessed with Minecraft.
Minecraft, I will say, Minecraft, I think it is very creative. My son loves Minecraft, and I'm absolutely blown away in the city that he's created. I'm like, you should be an architect. Like, I
Yeah.
can't even go in there and build a house, right? And he's created all this extravagant houses and I don't know, arenas. I'm a big fan of Minecraft because I do think there's like so much creativity.
They only play for a little while, like usually 1 or 2 hours on a Saturday. But then the rest of the week, because they're not allowed to have screens, we've gone to the library and gotten a bunch of books about Minecraft. And so
Oh,
all week
cool.
long, they're kind of like getting ready to play it and coming up with their ideas and reading these books and talking to each other about it and talking to their friends at school. And then it's sort of like they're all set and ready and excited of like, oh, I'm
Anticipation.
going to make a dungeon or a tree house or
Yeah.
whatever. And then I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years ago, I just was so sick of fighting with them about screens that I dubbed it Screen Free Sunday. We do
Yeah.
not do any screens all day on Sunday until 5 o'clock. And of course, first few weeks, just bug me, bug me, bug me. And then it really didn't take that long. They wake up on Sunday and they just go and set up a board game, or they start playing, or they start reading. They just know, don't even ask mom, because she's not going to say yes. And it's so nice. It's my favorite day, because all of a sudden, once I started that, I was realizing how creative they were and all these fun games that they were coming up with, and just let their imaginations run wild, because there was no other option. I wasn't going to let them do anything screen wise. And so they've really gotten great about it. They every once in a while it's like, "What time is it, mom? What time is it?" And I'm like, "It's 4:30. You still have to wait."
I love though that you said that they'll read books about Minecraft, they'll talk to their friends about the plan, and I don't know if you've seen the whole, like, there's a stat out there about vacation, and the anticipation leading up to vacation and the planning and all that stuff is actually a lot of times more satisfying than the actual vacation.
Interesting.
So the planning, the looking forward to, all that kind of stuff, and then they have time and space, so they're not just mindlessly in there.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
played when she played. There's 4 girls, our friends and us, like we each have 2 girls, and they were all playing Minecraft. And I just remember one of their daughters running downstairs screaming that my daughter had burned down her house. And I was like, what the heck? And they're like, she burned down my house. So literally that's my only experience with Minecraft. Like, that's it.
That's funny. Well, it is still a little bit hard to get them to stop, because they just get so into it, because there's really no end to Minecraft, pretty much. You can go on forever, which it is incredibly creative, but again, you can get really wrapped up in it. So, it's like 10-minute warning, guys, 5-minute warning, 1-minute warning. And they've gotten pretty good about getting off of it. But my 6-year-old every once in a while throws a tantrum. But I kind of tried to show them. I said, what do you guys think is a good amount of Minecraft to play in a year? And they're just like thinking. And I'm guessing in their head they were going to say like 20 hours or something. And I was like, how about 100 hours? And they were like, whoa. And I said, there's 52 weeks in a year. So if you guys played an hour on Fridays and an hour on Saturdays, that would be 104 hours a year. And I think, when you put it in that way, it's like, oh my gosh, why do I want to spend 100 hours of my life doing this? But when it, week by week, and they're like, come on, I want more. I just remind them of, like, remember we said that like 100 hours a year was a pretty good amount.
Yeah, that is. Well, one of the things you said too is like your consistency. We also have an ADHD and anxiety child, and we had the exact same experience that you had with taking away screens and tantrums and all that kind of stuff. And we went to it was like a same thing, like a psychologist that said, didn't put it in the Skinner terms, but just basically said, it's like gambling, right? It's like they're going to Vegas, and anytime you say yes, then you erase all the no's before that. Being consistent with them is so critical. So, and it's not easy, because they will try to wear you down.
Absolutely. But I'm actually amazed that after years of doing this, my older son, we'll go over to my sister's house or something, and they're all watching, and he'll just like sit in the other room. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, it's Sunday. I'm not allowed to watch.
That's awesome. The rule follower.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love it. But I think, putting out there too, for all the, moms listening saying, oh my God, I've gone down a hole I can't dig myself out of. It's never too late to set those guidelines. I think, like I said, life has, there was COVID, right? There was things that happened where, I think people didn't know how to handle certain things. We had kids home more than we ever thought they'd be home, and, bad habits got established. I think it's just knowing that wherever you are in your journey of raising your kid with technology, that it's never too late. Maybe you don't do it cold turkey, like you said, and all of a sudden be like, oh, I'm a bad mom. I've let my kid have too much iPad time. You can't have it for, 2 weeks. And your kid be like, what? Like, you got like anything, you got to like wean them off. Right. So
absolutely. And I actually wrote an article about this on my blog, where it's like, don't just start cold turkey out of nowhere, wake up one morning and be like, no screens, guys. I was like, I think I said something like, that's waiting for a train wreck to crash into a dumpster fire, something like that. I was like, no. you have to have stuff for them to do. You have to have another option. Again, it's like a muscle. Like they did not know what to do with themselves at first. And they've had to learn like, oh, okay, we can go play trains in the basement, or we can, slide down the stairs on a piece of cardboard or whatever they come up with. But they couldn't figure that out at first. And they would whine and cry, and I would have to suggest stuff. But what I really found was helpful at first was just to have stuff to do, like get out of the house, go to the park, go to swim lessons, go to the zoo, whatever, because then you're not missing it really. You're not, because if you're used to sitting around in your house on a Sunday watching screens, you're in that same environment, and it's really hard to break that habit. But if you're at the Children's Museum, you're not thinking about the fact that you're not on screens. You're out and about and you're doing something fun. And it doesn't make it so torturous for the parents who are just like staring at the clock of like, oh, when is it going to be 5? These guys are driving me crazy. So I think absolutely have a plan beforehand, and even start small and just decide like, okay, this Sunday we're going to do no screens from when we wake up until lunch, or just something like that, or from lunch until dinner, or something really small to just kind of give the kids an opportunity to flex that muscle a little bit. And I think being outside really helps a lot, because there's just things to do, things to look at. You're really not tempted to grab an iPad or something if you're throwing around the basketball.
Right. So I want to circle back. I know Jenny had brought this up, and I think it was an interesting question. So screens for different ages, right? I think there's different challenges at different ages, right? I have a stepson who's 16. Very different, right? They have control of their technology. He has a phone, he has Xbox, and then Jenny, whose girls are grown, but still, helping them create and have good habits. Like how do you have that advice for each age that's so very different? We still have control with the little ones,
Right. I mean, I wish I could go back and start again and just not do screens from the get-go, but I think there's probably very few people in this day and age that are just going to, have a baby and do 0 screens, because you think it's not that big of a deal until they get a little bit older and they start throwing the tantrums.
Yeah.
And so, I read this really amazing book that, everybody's been talking about, The Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
And he lays out a bunch of very specific guidelines, I think probably a little bit in part based on maybe the American Association of Pediatrics. But, it's saying, I mean, I really think if you have a baby or a toddler, like just as much as you can, just 0. You do not need to hand them a phone in the stroller. Like they don't even know what they're missing.
Right.
But
right.
Once they get little, I think he was saying something like an hour a day. I think when they're real little, maybe like from 2 to 6 or something like that. And, try to have it supervised. The thing is that I know we all use it as a break, because you're like, oh my gosh, my kids are driving me crazy. Please go watch Dora the Explorer while I take a moment, or I wash the dishes or whatever. So it's not always possible to sit with them. I mean, sometimes they say, it's good to sit and watch and talk about what you're watching together, but sometimes you just need a break.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But, I think he was saying an hour a day is good. Then kind of as they get older and older, then 2 hours a day. I mean, I think in theory it'd be really great if nobody did more than 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's really hard because they're already doing about 2 hours a day, if not more, at school. But, and I think that's part of the thing that Jonathan Haidt says in his book is these screens are what he calls an experience blocker. So if you're not, if you're doing a screen, you're not sleeping, you're not talking to friends, you're not exercising, you're not out playing, you're not having fun, you're not learning a new skill. I mean, there's just a million things that you're not doing. And also, you're not sitting there bored. It's actually really, really good for kids to be bored. That's when they come up with great ideas. That's when they let their minds wander. And it's also, again, another muscle of like, sorry, sometimes you're just bored in life. And if you can figure out how to get through that feeling, I mean, sorry, sometimes grownups have to stand in line at the DMV and they're just bored.
Yeah.
And if it, I think kids now, they've just never been bored. It's always like
Yeah.
shove
Oh
a
yeah.
phone in their
Yeah.
faces.
Yeah.
And okay, fine, but I just really think it's no coincidence that a lot of us come up with really great ideas when we're in the shower
Oh
Mhm.
because
yeah.
there's no distraction. You don't have your phone in the shower. You
Yeah.
actually let your mind wander,
Mhm.
and everybody needs that, and especially kids. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if people didn't do more than 2 hours a day, but everybody's got different circumstances, and yeah, I think that's hard, like you said, once you give the kids the iPhone. I mean, I think what parents can do is just put a lot of guardrails around it of, you know, you can't have it in your room, like, you
Yeah.
can't have it while you're sleeping, because I've heard horror stories of kids
Mm.
waking up at 2 in the morning
Oh,
and doing TikTok and talking to their
Oh
friends or
yeah.
whatever, and so then they wake up and they're just zombies, and it's like, "What happened to you?" And it's like, I was on TikTok for 3 hours from
so
2 to
Yeah.
5."
speaking of TikTok, this in the obsession with technology, have you seen, because of the whole thing going on right now, that phones you can't like install? I don't have TikTok, but apparently you can't like install TikTok. It has to like have already been on your phone to be using TikToks.
Oh, right.
So people
Oh.
are selling these phones with
Oh,
installed
seriously?
TikTok for thousands of dollars, because if you don't already have it on your phone, apparently you can't download it. So like there's this whole
Oh
market of
my
people
gosh.
selling phones
Wow.
with pre-installed TikTok. And I'm
I
like,
had not heard that.
wow.
I mean,
Wow.
it's basically like, I mean, the more you talk about it, and I know this has been said for a while now, but it's basically an addiction. So just like any
Mhm.
drug, like you were
Yes.
talking about, go to a different location because you might be tempted to use it when you're in the same, like all those things are the same as any kind of addiction,
Absolutely.
drinking, whatever, smoking.
Mhm.
The TikTok thing is fascinating because when it went offline the other day for what, 8 hours, I don't even know. Um, my friend was out to dinner with some friends of hers, and they had an older daughter who was probably like senior in high school. And the daughter was sharing with them that she realized that she hadn't had TikTok all day, and that she realized that she was normally on there. Like she can look at her screen time, and it was like 5 hours a day on TikTok.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, now she's like, I don't have it, and I mean, if it didn't come back, they would all adapt and, all that kind of stuff. But the other thing that I found interesting is my daughter said to me, she was like really sad it was going away. And I was like, cause I was like, I don't get it. And then all of a sudden she said, all my pictures with my friends, all my videos. So it's like it's all their memories. So we've combined this entertainment with all of their memories, with all their pictures, with all of
Right.
their,
Mhm.
and I hadn't seen it from that perspective before. So I thought that was really interesting.
Well, I have
Yeah.
this app and I actually love it. It's called Tiny Beans. And I love it because it's basically keeping all the photos. Like you can go in there every day and like have photos, and you can share the account with whoever that you want to
Mhm.
see it, or you can just have it for yourself. And for me, it's that keeping track of things, although we have pictures and stuff in our phone, like it's just an app where you dump these photos. So, I think that's what's scary is a lot of people have these Instagram accounts and
Yeah.
even Facebook, right? Where they have pictures they haven't saved or they haven't put on a cloud, and it's just sitting in this social media platform that could literally go away at any day. And then they're
Yeah.
like, oh, where's my life?
Like a fire, like you lost everything in a fire, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy. So let's talk about your website. So with all this wonderful advice, you've basically decided to put it on a website and blog about it. And so tell us a little more about that, Cynthia.
Yeah. I wanted an excuse to be able to get back to writing, since that's my past, my first love. Um, And partially, I just am really passionate about this. Like, I'm sure my friends are so annoyed that every time we get together, I want to talk about playtime and screen time. And, but I'm just really, really interested in it. I find it fascinating, all the actual scientific side of this about,
Mhm.
Mhm.
laying down new pathways in your brain and what these screens are doing to our brains, especially children's brains, and how it literally is changing the gray matter of your brain when you are doing some of these things hours and hours a day. And so I just decided, okay, might as well start a blog. It lets me write. It lets me kind of share this with the world, because I also, I've found my information from a lot of different places. I read a ton
Mhm.
of books. I listen to a bunch of podcasts. I, read a bunch of articles, and I thought, well, it would be kind of nice to like put it all in one place if somebody is interested in this realm, that if they I just went to screenlessplaymore.com. It's hopefully all there for you. I have a lot of different just hints of here's how we've done it. Here's how to start a routine, or how to slowly wean your kids off of the screens.
Yeah.
A little bit of scientific stuff about what it does to your brain. A lot of lists of like our favorite books, because, instead of doing screens, we read a lot. Different books that are our favorites around our house, or just the benefits of playtime. On that other side of the coin is if you're not doing screens, hopefully you're playing. And I'm just so fascinated by just our nature and our bodies, and like how kids, if they're given the free time to just play on their own, they do the things their body needs. And I read this amazing book. It's called Balanced and Barefoot by Angela Hanscom. And I think she's like an occupational therapist. And just things like kids jumping up and down or rolling down a hill or getting dizzy, all these things they actually need for their development. And it's the sort of stuff that you and we never taught our kids to roll
Right.
down a hill. They just do it, just all of a sudden they start spinning around and you think, you're going to get so dizzy. What are you doing? And she says, like, there's this vestibular system. It's kind of like our balance in our bodies. And they have to like kind of work at that system and prime that system to get it to the place it needs to be as they're growing up. And so like spinning around actually really kind of calibrates that system. And also the little tiny hairs in your ear, they're like in this like sort of liquid. And apparently that liquid is like very viscous when you're young. And so you don't really get very dizzy. And in puberty, it gets a lot thicker. And so it's harder for those little hairs to like stand back up after you've been twirling. So that's why we get so
So we get dizzy all the time. I always ask this question: at what age is spinning around in a circle not fun anymore?
Right. I used to love this stuff. And why do I get so, crazy?
Isn't it? I mean, I just think it's fascinating of like, well, there's a reason that grownups don't want to spin around and kids do. And I mean, she has this quote that is kind of frightening that I think it was her, that said, osteoporosis is a childhood disease. Because she's saying if you don't get the right, movement in your body and the weight bearing on your bones and jumping and spinning and all that stuff, that's when your bones don't develop correctly. And, they're just seeing a lot of stuff in kids now that like, apparently some kids are just like falling out of their chairs in school, or they're bumping into doors, and they're just not learning how to have the right balance system. Or like if they play tag, they're like pushing way too hard because they just haven't had enough experience of like, here's the appropriate amount of pressure to put on another person. Like if they're just sitting on their iPads for 7 hours a day, it's just, again, this experience blocking of all this other stuff that your body craves and needs as it's growing. And so I just find that all fascinating. So I'm trying to find that information, put it in my articles on my website so I can share it with other people, because I've just learned this stuff in the last couple of years as I've started researching, and it's sort of like, wow, I feel like every parent should know all this. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, we do it too, right? Like the other day I was like, it was a commercial and I was like scrolling, I was watching a show and I was scrolling on TikTok or Instagram. I'm like, I can't even sit through a damn commercial.
Right.
So to the point of spinning and stuff. So I was going to tell you like what Lori and I did to play. So one of our guests was like, I go to this dance class on Mondays and it's free dance, not free like you don't pay, but free like you just
free
kind
like
of move.
Yeah.
And so Lori and I went, and I will say it was incredibly uncomfortable, I think, for both of us because we're more structured. But literally people are just, the best way for me to describe it is it was like a bunch of 7-year-olds on the playground just running around doing their own thing. Don't you think, Lori?
Oh yeah. It was like she played music and she was just like, there is no wrong or right way to move your body. And it was an hour of that. And Jenny and I honestly closed my eyes for a lot of it because although it was a very small class, like you really had to get out of your own head and feel your body. And it was uncomfortable, but it was good. Like I enjoyed it when it was done.
So it's probably really embarrassing at first, but how did you feel by the end?
I felt better, right? Like, I think you kind of just realize that everybody started, especially Jenny and I, just started to like embrace it.
Yeah,
But it was definitely out of my comfort zone, out of Jenny's comfort
for
zone.
sure. Yeah,
But you got done and you're like, you, after an hour of just moving your body with not
right.
anybody directing you and saying, this is the right way to do this or wrong way, you played for an hour, really. You played
Yeah.
in your own body for an hour and you came out and you're like, you just felt, I felt bigger, as a sense of like just being,
Like you have an awareness of your body. That's what
yes,
I think
yes.
what you were saying is like we don't have an awareness of our body anymore, right? It's
Yeah,
like everything dictates what we have to do throughout the
Yeah.
day, like whether we sit in front of our computer, you
Mhm.
know, whether you're a kid or an adult. And so like being able to like feel your space, feel your
Mhm.
body in this space, I think is so important.
That
yeah,
actually would be a great thing to do with kids, right? Like you talk about play, is have a half an hour where you just it's you put on music and it's
Mhm.
like, just do what you feel you want to do in this half an hour, like dance, move around, run, and just let them experience like not having direction
absolutely.
of being told
Because,
what to do.
I think it's really changed through the years. And a lot of us had that free time and that playtime. We could be riding bikes through the
Mhm.
neighborhood, or we could
Yeah.
just be, again, if like you're bored, if your mom just says, it's okay to be bored, then
Yeah.
maybe you go and you suddenly see your 4-year-old is like dancing around in their room. Like they just come up with stuff and they
Yeah.
have the free time and the space to do it. But a lot of kids these days, from sun up to sundown, it's like,
Crazy.
sit at the table, eat
Yep.
your breakfast,
Yep.
Mhm.
get in the car, sit at the table, sit in your desk, go
Right.
to piano lessons, go
Yep.
to this, go to that. And
Mhm.
like, even if they're at gymnastics or soccer or whatever, it's not really free
It's
play. It's
structured,
like,
very structured.
there's
Mhm.
rules and we're playing this game and no, you can't do that and
Mhm.
time out and all, everything like that. It's just so structured. And I think there's a time and place for all of that. I think soccer class is really fun and it's great
Yeah.
and you learn things and you make bonds with other kids and you learn teamwork and all that stuff, but you don't want to have too much of one thing. You don't want to be absolutely super duper structured every second of your day, or these kids, no wonder they explode. Like, and
Right.
like, if they have any sort of a choice in anything, if you've been telling them exactly what to do all day long, and then it's like, time to brush your teeth, and they're like, no, like they
Right.
finally
They
got
flip
to that place
full
where it's
up
like,
on.
I have a choice and I'm not gonna do this. Whereas I feel like, okay, if they were outside for a couple hours doing whatever the heck they wanted,
Mhm.
Right.
then hopefully, maybe, I mean, it's like, okay, time to brush your teeth. Like, I'm trying really hard as a parent, and it's always a struggle, absolutely. But it's sort of like, do I really need to say no? Or
Yeah,
do I really
totally.
need to, like, can I just let my kid do whatever the heck they wanna do? Because there's times that I really do wanna say, like, "You have to wear your seatbelt,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
have to wear
Yeah.
sunscreen, you
Yeah.
have to brush your teeth."
Yeah.
It's like, "Alright,
Does
you
this
don't
matter
have
that
to eat that
much?
Yeah.
broccoli." Like, I'd
Yeah.
love you to eat that broccoli, but you don't really have to. Or,
Yeah.
like, you don't have like, if you jump up on that log or climb that tree and it makes me a little scared, okay, like,
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
your thing. Because like, that's another thing, is we wanna teach kids to, like, trust themselves, and
Mhm.
if,
Yeah.
they're not gonna learn to climb to the top of the tree unless they start really
Well,
small,
and
and then
problem
they
solve. Like I remember my friend and I like she crashed on her bike. We had to like figure out how to get her home. We had to figure like they don't have those because we don't let them go like play by themselves out in
Mhm.
wilderness, right? Like
Mhm.
so they
right.
don't have those times where they have to figure it out.
Absolutely, and I think that's another thing that Jonathan Haidt says in his book is, like, he's got these 4 things, he's saying something like, no smartphones until a certain age that I can't remember, screen-free schools, no
Mhm.
social media until you're 16, but he also says more independence and more free play.
Mm.
So, if you guys think to yourselves, like, how old were you and what were you doing the first time you remember truly being independent and doing something without your friends? I mean, without your parents.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing it was probably a lot younger than you've let your children. Because I know I walked
Oh.
to the bus stop when I was 5 years old, and
Yeah.
it was like a good 10-minute walk. I haven't let my kids do something like that yet,
Or we'd go
you
to
Right.
the
know?
pool in the summer and the lifeguard
Yeah.
was there, but our parents weren't there.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so funny about with, summer camps, as you know, Cynthia, the mix of like summer's coming up and there's this big push like, oh my gosh, get your kids signed up for all these camps. But I think back to like, I never did a summer camp. My thing was exactly that, Jenny. Like, I don't even know where my mom was. I guess she was working, right? But it was like, I was at the pool every day.
Yeah.
It's just amazing because there was no such thing as like summer camps. Like,
And
summer
how
camp
old
was
do you think
outside.
you were?
Oh, I was probably 5th, 6th grade. I mean,
Yeah.
I was with a bunch of girlfriends a couple weekends ago and we started talking about this and we kind of shocked ourselves at all the stuff we used to do and how young we were. I mean, a couple of the friends said that their mom would just drop them off at the rec center and they'd
Yeah.
swim for hours. And
Hours.
she was like, I think we were about 9.
Yeah,
And,
totally.
That was
granted,
their summer camp. That was
right. Or we would grab the city bus and go to the mall.
Right.
Or we would, I mean, there were so many things. And it was kind of eye opening to us because we all have children
Yeah.
and they're all between the ages of like 6 and 11. And we all just felt sort of guilty, like, oh my gosh, we don't let our kids do that. And so I've been trying really hard in the last year. Like, I'll park at the grocery store and I'll tell my 9-year-old, like, okay, go in. I want you to get the milk.
Yeah.
And he's
That's
so
great.
excited. He's so happy to do it. He goes, he gets the milk, he takes my credit card, he does the self-checkout, and he's just so pleased with himself. And he waltzes back out. And I've just been sitting there in the car. Of course, I've been watching the door. Like, I know if he's coming in or coming out.
Right.
But it's like, I feel like we all did stuff like that so much younger. And so, it was kind of fun that when I was talking to my girlfriends, one of them had this aha moment where she said what her plan for the summer was she was going to have her boys go to a camp at the elementary school that we all went to in Boulder. And her mom, who lives close by to the school, was going to drive and pick the boys up and drop them off every day. And she suddenly thought, oh, I used to walk that all the time. I'm going to tell my mom just to have the boys walk.
Yeah.
Because it's the house she grew up in. It's the house she used to walk to from the exact same school. And she was intending on having her children be chauffeured. And they're older than she was, So she's like, yes, I'm totally going to have them walk back and forth because I did it. It's totally fine. It's actually even safer now. They've made an underpass on the road that she used to cross. And now they don't even have to cross any roads.
Some of my best memories are walking to and from school because there was a whole group of us and we'd pick each other up along the way and then we drop each other, I remember, and my dad had to put limits on how long it took me to get from school to home because he'd start to worry because we'd just be, screwing around.
Right. You just get sidetracked and
totally.
That's the beauty of it. So Cynthia, you're doing amazing things. I love it. I can't wait to spend some time on your website. But, one of the questions I want to kind of ask before we conclude our conversation today is, what are you most proud of?
One of the things that's been really difficult that I'm proud of myself is navigating my son's ADHD because it was really a total mess when he was real little and I didn't quite know what to do. I think I had a little bit of a leg up because my dad had pretty bad ADHD. And so I very early on started seeing the signs. And so I was sort of aware of what I was dealing with, but I just didn't know how to deal with it. And I'm just proud of myself that I've kind of fought through and we've found the right therapists. We've found the right medication. I've read a zillion books. I've done a bunch of research and we're just in a much better place because it was real chaos at first. And I feel very good about how I've advocated for him and the different help we've gotten him in school. And it's really been tough and it's really been a journey. But I'd say that's one of the things I'm really proud of because I know it's going to make his life a lot easier than it could have been otherwise. Because I think about all the things my dad had to go through when ADHD wasn't really a thing. People didn't know what it was. And I feel like he really struggled through his career and struggled through his childhood needlessly. I mean, needlessly or not needlessly, there was nothing anybody was going to do in 1960 about ADHD. But we have so many things that can be done now. And so I just feel glad that my son can really be his best self and kind of get rid of all that static.
I love that. And one more question. What are you looking forward to?
that I am going to start my own podcast soon. Yeah, it'll be, again,
Woo!
Screen Less, Play More, but kind of taking the same sorts of things that I've been blogging about and talking about it, and interviewing different authors, and just, all these books that I read that I find so fascinating. I'd love to talk to the authors and ask them more. And so, yeah, I'm hoping I'll start that in the next month or so people can kind of look out for that.
Oh, I
Well, let
love it.
us
I
know what
think,
it's like
Oh,
so
good.
we can share it too.
yes. And I think it's so important because technology is not going away, and it's it's a constant. So I feel like having the resources is so important, and to be able to chime into a podcast where you're interviewing people that are experts in the field. I'm looking forward to chiming in and listening to it. And we really appreciate having you on the show because, our listeners have kids, and we all have this facing us on a day-to-day basis. And I love the tips and tricks that you gave us today. And I look forward
Thank
to
you.
implementing some with my kiddos.
Or just start fresh today, and just, because it's true. It's
Yeah.
tough. It's so tough. And it's so easy to just be like, please go just do the iPad. I need 10 minutes. Like, I really, really get that.
But it makes us stronger mamas, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.